Hi everyone and welcome to namehero.com. In this video tutorial I want to talk about how to fix the error establishing a database connection inside of WordPress specifically, but this tutorial will also help you diagnose this error with other scripts. So let's talk really quick about NameHero. Here at NameHero, we offer high-speed cloud web hosting. Specifically, WordPress is one of the applications we're heavily optimized for. We find that 95 to 98% of our customers use WordPress in some capacity or another. While a lot of our customers choose to use WordPress as their entire content management system, some other customers use it simply as a blog. But whatever you choose to use it as, this error sometimes you frequently run into. So if you do not have a WordPress host, or if you're looking for a WordPress host, I welcome you to check out our packages. It starts as low as $3.59 a month, and then you can scale on up as your business grows. Since NameHero is on our high-speed private cloud, we can handle any amount of traffic that you have, and you can see each one of our packages, they differentiate depending on how many monthly visitors you get. Now, of course, if you're getting more than 100,000 monthly visitors, we can, of course, accommodate you with our VPS hosting, and we can go up to even several million visitors a day if we need to. So you can always reach out to our sales team, let them know how many visitors you're getting, and we will come up with a solution for you. We are experts, we consider ourselves experts at scaling WordPress and providing a reliable, redundant infrastructure. So with that said, let's talk about this error and how you can go about troubleshooting this. So this is a very frustrating error. I know when I've gotten it before, it's one of those things that kind of makes you want to pull your hair out, because like error establishing database connection. Okay, now what do I do? So I'm going to walk you through on a couple of things to troubleshoot this, and then you can kind of go from there. Now, a lot of times people run into this when they're making modifications to their WordPress, and unfortunately some people wake up to this. And a lot of times if you wake up to this, if it was working yesterday but today you're getting this, a lot of times your WP config file has been modified. So this could indicate that you have malware on your website. Now, if you're hosting with us here at NameHero, we automatically scan every single account on our servers for free every night for malware. If we find it, we automatically remove it to protect you and your website. Now, when we automatically remove it, if someone has injected some scripts inside of your WP config file, you might need to regenerate that, but we'll talk about that later on. Let's talk about how we go about diagnosing this error. So I want to log into my NameHero account so I can go from there. And if you're following along, you can follow these steps. I'm just going to hover over account and click login. Once I enter my credentials, I'm brought to our main client dashboard here at NameHero. And so I want to click on Cloud Web Hosting, and I want to find the package that this website's on. So keydiets.com is our example domain today, and we're using the Plus Cloud package. So it's right here. I've got several packages in this account because it's my demonstration account. Okay, so once I get inside of here, I need to get into cPanel. So under Actions, I'm going to click Log into cPanel. Okay, so from here, the first thing that I want to troubleshoot is I want to look at my WP config file and make sure my database credentials are correct. Because sometimes if you've made edits, or if you've edited your database, or maybe you have a developer and they've edited a password, sometimes the credentials just get messed up. So that's the first thing we always want to check in this case. So I'm going to click on File Manager, and I'm going to go to the root folder where WordPress resides. Now, if WordPress comes up when you type in your domain, most likely WordPress is installed in your public HTML folder. So we're going to double click on the world icon here, and we're going to navigate to wp-config.php. So this is my config file, and if your WordPress is in a subdirectory such as WordPress, maybe check inside of there. So I'm going to click on Edit, click Edit again, and I want to look at my database name, my username, and my password. So the first thing is I want to look at this database name, keydiets_WP. So now I'm going to head back over here to cPanel, and I'm going to type in mySQL. And I'm going to look at MySQL databases, and I'm going to go down here to make sure that I'm using the right database name. So keydiets_WP, and if I look at my config file, that is correct. Now I want to look at the username for the database. So I'm going to go back to cPanel and look at the privileged users. So you can see that keydiets_WP is a user that is privileged to this database. It has all privileges. So I'm going to go in here and make sure that's correct. It is. Okay, so now that I know I'm using the correct database, I'm using the correct correct user. Now what about the password? So if I look inside of the quotes, this is the password of the user. So if I'm getting this error, let's try resetting the database user's password. So I'm going to go down here to the user, which is right here, and I'm going to click change password. And I like to use this password generator because it generates a secure password. So I'm going to take this and copy it and put I've copied this in a safe place, click use password, and then click change password. You always want this to say very strong 100 for 100 because if it's anything less than that, it's possible you're putting your installation in a vulnerable state. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to go back to WP config and I'm going to replace this with my new password. And I'm going to click Save Changes. Now I'm going to go back to my site and refresh it and see if I still get the error. And you can see my site now loads. The problem in this instance was I had an incorrect database user password. So most of the time that will solve your error. Now we'll go back to the config file and let's just enter a number after the database name. Click Save. Go back to our site and here's the error again. So in this case, the database name is wrong. So you can check this by going back into cPanel, MySQL databases, and making sure you're using the correct database name. So I can just copy this, go back here, in between the quotes, and paste it, click Save, go back to our site, and refresh it, and now it's working again. So you want to check your database name, your database password, and also your database user. Let's just type in a couple extra numbers and click Save. Go back to our site. Here's the dreaded error. So we can go back to cPanel, MySQL, and look at the privileged users beside the database. So you can see here's the privileged user. So we can copy this. Go back to our WP config file. We can highlight what's in between the quotes, paste it, whoops, click Save Changes, and refresh it again. And now it's working. Okay, so we want to check first off that the database name's right, the database user's right, and the database password is right. 9 chances out of 10, that will fix your issue. Now let's talk about other errors that can cause this or other issues. Database host, this is the MySQL host name. Now let's say you're moving over from an existing web host, or maybe you're using GoDaddy or you're using Namecheap to host, or HostGator or Bluehost, and let's say there's a different value in the host name. Maybe it's an IP address, and we'll just put 128.1.1 and click Save. So if we go back to our site and refresh it, an error establishing a database connection. So in this case, the database host name is incorrect. If you're using NameHero and you have your database and your files all on our same package, most of the time this value is simply localhost. So if you're using any other value than that, you want to check localhost. We can click on Save, go back to our site and refresh it, and now it's working. So you want to check these values first to troubleshoot this issue, because most of the time that's where the issue lies. Now let's go down here a little bit more and let's talk about the table prefix. Let's change this table prefix a little bit. Let's just put 1 in front of the WP. Click Save. If we go back to our site and hit refresh, you can see we're getting not the error establishing a database connection, but we're getting an error in WordPress itself. It's trying to reinstall WordPress. So how we can verify the table prefix is very simple. We're going to go back to cPanel and we want to type in PHP and we're going to go into phpMyAdmin. So from here, we want to click on the database on the left-handed side. So you can see we have the information schema and then we have the database keydiets_WP. So we're going to click this and you can find this table prefix right here. The table prefix is basically the letters that come before each table. So in this case, it's WP_, that comes before every one of the tables. So we go back to our config file and you can see I put 1 in front of it. So that's not correct. WP_ is our table prefix. Click Save, go back to our site, just go to keydiets.com and you can see the site loads. So most of the time that will fix your common issues with error establishing a database connection. Now, let's say that your database doesn't have, or your database user does not have adequate permissions. So let's go back to cPanel let's type in MySQL databases, and let's click this privileged user, and we're going to remove the privileges. We'll go back. Let's go back to our site and refresh. Error establishing a database connection. What's wrong? So you verified that all these values are correct, but a common error that happens is sometimes your database does not have any privileged users. So if I just refresh this screen here, you're going to see I've got my database here. I've got a privileged user, but if I click it, I can see there's no privileges assigned. So I want to select all privileges, click Make Changes, go back to our site here, refresh, and now it's working. So not only do you have to have a user assigned to the database, it's got to have those privileges in order to work. So that's another common thing we see inside of our support center. Now let's delete this privileged user from the database. Let's go back to our site, refresh it. Error establishing a database connection. Oh no, what do we do? Okay, so let's go back to cPanel, MySQL databases. We'll scroll down here. You can see we have the database that's in the WP config file. We have a user called WP down here, but it's not privileged. It's not assigned to the database. There's no privileged users. So if this is our case and we don't see a privileged user here, we go down here to add user to database, and we simply make sure that the user is here, the database is selected here, click add. We want to add all privileges, click Make Changes, and then we can refresh our site and the error is gone. So most of the time it's one of these cases. When you get the error establishing a database connection, this simply means that the WordPress files are unable to talk to the database. So when it goes to connect to the database, it first off looks at the host's name. It says, okay, what are we trying to connect to? In our case, it's localhost. Now, if you're coming from another web host, sometimes I've seen GoDaddy that will have an IP address or a server host name in here. So you want to make sure it's localhost at Name Hero on our shared and reseller packages. You want to make sure you are connecting to that. Then you want to check the database name. Is that correct? And is the database user correct? And is the database password correct? Now, sometimes if you have a lot of databases inside of here, it can get quite confusing. So that's why it's always good to look at your current databases and make sure that the database and the privileged user lines up, and then that the privileged user has all privileges, as well as you might want to reset the password because sometimes the password can get scrambled or messed up. So that's how you fix that error, and 9 chances out of 10 this will solve your case. Now, if you're using a WordPress installation where the database is on another server, then we have to get into checking the firewall ports and all that stuff. So you can always reach out to our support team. If let's say you're hosting your WordPress files on one VPS and maybe you have another VPS that's hosting your database, then we have to make sure those two servers can actually talk on a firewall level. Now that doesn't really apply to a lot of customers, but it does apply to some of our customers here at Name Hero. So if you run into that issue, most of the time, either the host name is not your database host, or the IP address of the servers is not allowing it to connect. So that's another common thing that we see when the database and the files are not hosted on the same server. But 99% of our customers going through these troubleshooting tips and making sure that everything in this file is correct will definitely fix it for you. Now, let me go to this website right here, this WordPress site, editing to WP config. And this will go through step by step what you need to look for. And so everything I've covered is inside of here. And you can see it even has some of the common hosts, like what some of the hosts call this. If it's not localhost, it has some of the values that it may be. So that's why I said it's important if you're moving over from another web host that you check that, because here at Name Hero it's localhost, and most web hosts it is. But you can see, for example, at iPage, it's like username.ipage MySQL, or iPower, username.ipowermysql. So depending on the host you're coming from, sometimes this is different. Media Temple is different in a couple different ones. So you need to check that. And this documentation is good because it kind of walks you through step by step everything that we just covered. So make sure you reference this file if you have any questions on it. But that's how you solve the database issue. It simply means, the error means that the database is not connecting to the files. As long as the database is in your cPanel, there's really no need to worry. It's just something's not syncing up, and we can go through those troubleshooting tips. And of course, if you go through all this and you're still getting the error, then you can have our level 3 support team at NameHero look into it a little bit deeper, something else going on. We always recommend that if you keep your WordPress files updated. And if you think that you haven't, it's always best sometimes to re-upload the WordPress files. If you're not sure, is my WordPress compromised? Do I have malware? Has some malware been removed? And then just ask our support team so we can check and then give you the recommendation. But most of the time, malware is prevented by just keeping WordPress updated. When you log into WP Admin, it will tell you if there's an update available, and you need to simply run that. Keep your WordPress updated, because that will allow these issues not to occur in your website to stay safe, secure, and online. So if you have any questions resolving this, or if you've done these troubleshooting tips, as I said, and you can't resolve it, let us know. We'd be more than willing to help. But thanks so much, everyone, for using NameHero's high-speed cloud web hosting. It's certainly our pleasure to serve you and your website.